Hi guys, this is a bit of an overview and a bit of a summary on Bitcoin, and I'm going to go back, several months. I'm going back to March when I was actually calling the all-time high as the top. Okay, now for you guys who follow me, you may remember right at the start, I was actually talking about this with a massive question mark on a 3 monthly situation and the assumption that we were actually at a potential weekly move here, which could potentially be a weekly 5 move. Okay. Now, personally, the version of this that I liked was the weekly 3 to 4 and the monthly 5 not in. I had question after question after question as to what if this was actually the monthly 3. Okay. Now, the reason I don't feel that this was the monthly 3 is that when we step back into the weekly moves overall within the monthly 3, and I'll come into this in a second, we could actually see that on the monthly time frame we had a nice push down, but the weekly time frame fitted with the Elliott waves as a whole in terms of the Weiss wave kind of 3 move, and therefore this could easily be a very deep LPS move within a much bigger time frame. Okay, so if we assume that we start our count from here and we go this back down here, up for a 3, 4 possibly not in yet, and 5 there. If we were to look at these particular numbers purely based on the extension, so I'm just going to run the extension, just go roughly from the 0 level up high and back down to the 2. We can easily target this particular range. We just put a little arrow. We can easily target this range as a 361. We've clearly just gone over the 2618 here. Okay, so I'm just going to put my first little level or line around this region. Okay, so this is kind of step 1. Now, when I look at the weekly time frame, I now have to come basically from this level here and work out inside this box where we're actually looking at on the weekly time frame if we haven't yet made a monthly 3. Okay, so let's assume that the monthly 3 is not quite good enough for the move, and there is obviously 2 scenarios. We could actually be bearish on this, and I'll come into that again in a second. So if we now assume that on this particular move, I'm going to change the color once I've set this, we're going to come from the low 2, we're going to come up 1, we're going to go 2. Now, we could argue a 3, 4, and a 5 move, which could easily be option 1. The second option will give us practically the same 1 move to 2 move, up for a 3 move, down for a 4, giving us a 5. Right now, this for me is the one that I personally prefer. I'm going to change this color as well. So I'm going to put this in as this. Okay, so the blue move could easily be a potential move and a potential play for the pullback 3 up for 4 and then finish off with 5. But what I actually feel is that this particular 4 move gives me a bit more comfort in the ABC move down. And yes, we have a bit of a sideways range here. And again, this comes back into question at a later point. Okay, so if we were to assume that on this particular move up, we've now got confirmation of a weekly 4 coming in, which is what a lot of the people that I read about and the chats and the conversations that I've been having, if the assumption is that we are now on our way to a weekly 5, that weekly 5 is only actually giving me a monthly 3, right? So confirming a monthly 3 sitting at this kind of level. Okay, so you got confirmation on a monthly 3. We can then rub the Fibonacci extension levels all over this and look at a 0, 1, and a 2 move, okay? And the pullback move that we were looking for would give us probably something like a 5 or even a 6, 618 on the weekly time frame. Now that's kind of obscene as a whole, but it is Bitcoin. So for me, what I like about this particular move more than I do the monthly 3 being the one that's actually completed is that if I now move my monthly 3 up to this kind of level, and we assume this move here being the pink, we're actually going to get a monthly 3, weekly 5, which is where the original concept for me come in with the rocket call. And therefore, what I'd like to see in this particular move is a pullback now inside this, giving us the 1 here, back for 2, this being the 3, 4, and then the 5 move up. I'll just change the color on this one, maybe something like this. And therefore, we could easily get a move, and I guess because of the only rule for Elliott being 2 to 3 can't be the shortest, we've already got a very, very short one. So it kind of ticks a box, right? Now, if we were to run real Fibonacci extensions and respectful Fibonacci extensions on this particular move, we'd actually be looking at a range somewhere from here up to the 1, back down for the 2, and a respectful level will actually pull this only down as far as this, okay? So we now have a potential range of a monthly move taking us up somewhere between the 62 and 77,000 level, okay? So that gives me a nice little range, and putting a composite man hat on, the way that I'm seeing this and the way that I'm looking at this is how evil would this particular move become if it was to sucker in long positions just as we take out the current all-time high. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of these arrows a second, and I'm going to assume that this is where we are, option 1. Okay, now going back all the way to March, and you'll see this on March the 18th, I posted the first rocket call. March the 26th, I was calling this particular move. Okay, now this particular move, what I have here is if we had a bit more depth in our pullback, I would have liked to have seen a slightly higher 3. Now the 3 was the monthly 3 that I've just discussed, and I get the impression that it's actually going to come a little bit lower given the current Fibonacci extension. So, going all the way back to March, looking at a move up from 85 to around 100,000 made a bit more sense then. Looking at reacting to the market and actually looking at the current situation, I get the feeling that that is going to be capped at around 79k before a bigger corrective move down. So personally, if I'm looking at this and assuming that I'm now currently bullish on this particular move, I'm only bullish to the current all-time high, to potentially 77, 78,000 on that particular box. And then I would expect the monthly 3 to 4 move to take us all the way back down to the 35 to 40k level at least. Okay, now the reason for this and the reason that I'm thinking this is that Composite Man is going to look to suck it in as much retail as possible. We take an all-time high on a slow grind up. That's going to only come as far as where we are right now, which, like I said, enters the box. We've entered the box, or we're going to enter the box, and then ultimately we're going to attract a lot more buyers in the retail sector that will jump on this thinking, this is the one to buy and hold, and therefore we get a massive drop down. Now, if you understand anything in terms of Elliott wave, what you often find is, patterns do repeat themselves, and where you'd expect the move down on the bigger time frame is basically the previous move on the smaller time frame. So easily 30, 35, got a value area around the 35, 36k region, which is the center line of the value box going back, like I said, as far as March. Just take this back off a second. And therefore, if the value area is 35.36, we could assume a potential deep drop down for the monthly move. And therefore, I'm not overly convinced that this is the one to buy and hold. Okay, so I don't like a couple of things, as I mentioned at the start of this video. There's a couple of things I really, really don't like in terms of the current situation. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to box up another little range from the pullback high all the way across to this level here. I'll just change the color so it's easy to spot when we go into a smaller time frame. And therefore, on the smaller time frame, if we assume that this now is, like I said, a bullish move, we would have to assume that from our starting point low 4 would be the 0. We'd be looking for a 1 move back down for a 2. We'd currently be roughly at a 3, 4, and a 5. I'm just going to leave those as they are for now. I'm going to change this to something a little bit more vivid. Let's go yellow. Okay, now in Elliott terms, you have the corrective moves being 3 and the impulsive moves being 5. Okay, now again, part of what I'm not a big fan on this is from the 0 we have a 1 move, 2 move, and a 3 move. Okay, so I really don't like that as we stand at the moment. Just deleted it. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so if I was to look at this trade and say, would I get in long at this particular point? Definitely not. You'd expect to see a pullback 3 up for then 5 overall finishing as that move being then an impulsive move up. Now, being corrective, you'd assume in a 3 move or a combo move, but not actually a 5 move. Now, what I can see in this, we've got a 1, we've got a 2, we've got a 3, we've got a 4, and then a long 5 to finish this particular move off. So 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 makes no sense for me. There's no logic that I can kind of pick apart in this one. So really, the only thing that starts to make a bit of sense in the move up are some of the Fibonacci extension levels in terms of the current 1, 2, 3. So if I come here, 0 up to 1 and back down for 2, we could potentially see a 1618 on the bounce, which is something you'd expect to see on an impulsive move, and you would actually expect to see a completion around the 2618. So again, the problem for me is we have 2 ticks in the box. We have 2 X's down here in terms of things that I don't like, which means we can easily still be in the monthly 5 wave of the bigger corrective pattern, which is what I touched on earlier. So let's switch now from bullish to bearish, and I'll jump out in terms of the monthly time frame, which is actually what I think right now we could actually also be in. Now, the reason that I think this is still an option, still on the table, although I don't like the weekly being the 5 and the monthly already confirming the 3, is that if the monthly 3 is in, then what I would now anticipate is a move that looks like this: a 0 to an A up for a B, and a B down for a C. Right? So this here would mean we'd actually see an ABC move. We're likely to see some 3 or 5 combo here, and it's then going to not turn into a zigzag move. We're actually going to get a combo move, which could end up being a double zigzag or a zigzag into a flat, etc., etc., etc. So now I'm going to start looking at the possibilities of both. And I'm not happy to take a long trade if I'm not comfortable that, one, the market is going to go beyond and way, way beyond the all-time high, or we're going to get a deeper corrective push, which will give me a better entry overall to take the longer trade as a whole. Okay, so if we now assume that this potentially being the move, we'd now have to use the retracement tool and look at, from the all-time high, how far we've actually pulled back. So down to the low, how far we've actually pulled back. We still have a long way to go. There's probably a 786 move in and around the center of the box, which perfectly lines up. We've got an 86% move, further back, and we're not actually going to, I suppose, invalidate this particular move until we get above that all-time high. So for me, it's now the looking at the character at this particular point. Okay, so where I feel at the moment in terms of the bearish side, we definitely have some room to go on the monthly. I'm going to drop down into the weekly time frame. I'm just going to get rid of some of these a second so it's a bit easier to see. Now, on the weekly time frame, I can also see some logic as to why we would have potentially a 3 up here and drop down for 4. But again, it's the character that I'm really keen on looking for within this to give me clarification as to why and where ultimately this could take us. Now, sticking on the stochastic tool, I can actually see that we're way, way, way overbought, and we've actually had this overall rise with declining volume. So again, for me, there's actually bearish divergence popping up here on a move down, which still gives me some form of comfort that we're in the ABC move, and we're only now looking to finish off the A to B move on the monthly time frame. So worst case scenario, we've got a monthly move down to come, which will give us the AB followed by the C, which should ultimately come back to around the 35 value area, if not a bit deeper. If we are bullish, then ultimately we're going to get a pullback bullish 3 to 4 weekly, which is what I have in blue here, which will take us back down around the 42,000 level. And then from there, if we only get as low as 44, 42,000 roughly, then I would expect an all-time high to be hit, 64 to 79,000, before the evil move down on the monthly time frame. So that's currently what I'm seeing. I'm going to keep this one pretty short today. Um, I'll fill up some more info in the next couple of days, depending on the character traits of this. But I think for me, I've got a bearish scenario, ABC monthly. I've got a bullish scenario with a corrective move to come, and I've got an overall bullish scenario that only takes us up as high as potentially 80k roughly before the evil manipulation move down, taking us all the way back down to 35. So imagine buying at 65 and this dropping back down to 35 in a couple of days. It's going to upset a lot of people. So for me, I'm still comfortable with this particular move, regardless of trying to catch the bottom. I just feel, yes, we've had a shitty move up. It's very slow, doesn't feel impulsive, and that gives me, like I said, one of two things. I'm bullish with a little bit of caution, or I'm still ultimately bearish with a bit more confidence. So right now, that isn't the best place for me personally to suggest a buy, and therefore I'm holding out, waiting to see the character when we get to the next couple of key levels. So I hope this makes sense. I hope you enjoyed, and I will be doing another video in the next couple of days. Cheers all.